Hang on. Jeez, so needy. Welcome back to the Dynasty Grind. My name is Peter Howard at Peter Howdy on Twitter. We talk about Dynasty and fantasy football in general every Wednesday night from 9:30 to when we get tired, go to bed, or run out of questions and comments. If you have any thoughts, questions, or ideas about fantasy football, we'll be happy to talk about them. Drop them whatever box on whatever platform you happen to be watching us on, and we'll bring them up in order. We're kind of democratic that way. Not much happened today, though, so I'm sure there won't be a bunch of similar questions about how maybe now Curtis Samuel is relevant. Let's go talk to Zach. Maybe I should click on the Zach, but there he is. How you doing, Zach?
Hey, wouldn't you have been embarrassed if I showed up in my Curtis Samuel jersey?
No. Doesn't matter how many times you say, look, players don't break out that often deep into their career without having shown some signs of life before. And people say that's just a useless, obvious observation. And yet every time there's a trade, everyone's like, this fourth string wide receiver that I've been holding on the back of my depth squad, despite what you say, it's finally going to be good.
It could happen.
But anyway. Yeah, I guess no. I broke a no potential, but 30% don't exist. I got your tweet finally.
You're welcome.
So yeah, I've seen a range of takes from, like you said, from Josh Allen is now trash to CJ Stroud is now the best quarterback ever, as if he did do something in his rookie year to kind of demonstrate that he should already be in that top 5 range. So yeah, I've been tilting on every one. I haven't heard a good take yet. Do you have one?
I think that the trade is good for Stroud. I think that it will be the Houston offense will be unstoppable. Like I do not see a way to defend the Houston offense because, and I've heard Diggs is washed. The problem with the Diggs is washed take is
for sure
the reason why people think Diggs is washed is because his 2022 season was absolutely ridiculous. Last season, he finished as the wide receiver 9, wide receiver 14 in points per game, had 107 receptions and almost 1,200 yards, and he's washed. Like what are we doing? He's now the best receiver in Houston, which means Houston is really good because not only do you have Diggs, but you still have Nico Collins and you still have Tank Dell. And oh, by the way, you added Joe Mixon, who, while he may be quasi-washed, like how do you defend Joe Mixon if you have to defend those 3 wide receivers on the outside? With by the way, CJ Stroud throwing to them, who proved last year that he is, in fact, very good. So
pretty good.
Yeah, but I do
Houston to the moon. The thing is, everything I'm hearing about that's like, oh, he's maybe just outside the top tier of quarterback now. I'm like, wasn't he already?
He should have been.
He should have already. I have not had to move a rank, and it just seems like people. This is what's annoying me. They're getting in the right place for the wrong goddamn reasons, and that's annoying. Like I was ahead of you. Could you all just stop fumbling your way into success? I'd appreciate it.
They don't ask how, just if. It's the immaculate reception. Franco Harris got the ball. It's a touchdown. It doesn't matter how he got it. We're there.
Doesn't really matter. Anyway, Tank Dell or 25 first. It was Dell last week. It's definitely Dell now. A player who has a good rookie year, not like a good, not even like JSN, but unquestionably people liked and enjoyed starting him and the value escalated. Are worth a first. They should have been drafted in the first round. We miss some every year. And then they're worth a first. What? People's rookie values scare me. Like they'll constantly bicker over the price of the 109 and the 110 and the 107 for this good ex-vet or that good ex-vet. And then a good rookie actually does something like, is he worth a first now? It's like, yes, instantly. Like
Yeah.
yeah, he's
No,
worth a ton more than a single random first next year, Drew.
but,
Like 3 weeks into his rookie season. What are we doing here? Yeah.
but I think this is a kind of an important piece though to talk through. And I mean, I don't mean to take a whole bunch of
Maybe,
time,
but
but
I'm kind of done with the pussy, the
well, but no,
pussyfooting
but
around it. Like some
I
things you should just know.
well, hold on. But
Like you would do it if it was on your roster, you know?
I think that people overvalue and over are overconfident in first round picks. So like when you see first round rookie pick, immediately you're like,
It's
oh, well, that's going to be Justin Jefferson. That's going to be CeeDee Lamb. That's going to be Jamar Chase. It's not necessarily going to be that because like we are not that good as a whole, and neither is the NFL, but we as a fantasy community are one step removed from that. And so if we're hitting a top 24 season in a player's career, that's around a 50% proposition in the first round. And the first half of the first round is the better bet than the second half of the first round.
Well, it depends on we spend so much time talking about this every year. It's like there's a tier. There's a tier of players in every class where you do what you have to get into it. There'll be a miss, maybe. But like that's the group of players you're allowed to be that excited about. And this year there's like 5 to 7. It's really deep compared to most years. And everyone else is just kind of a meh. Like well, I like a few players, I like swim players a lot, but they're all more risky than what we know of more proven players. Like 25% shot of moonshotting it, and that's as good as you get outside of that tier because it drops off pretty steeply after that. I think it feels like it's done be none, you know. But that's why we stress over whether Downs or JSN are buys or sells because they're all worth late first, not because late first are good, but because they're not. To get up beyond that. But so Dell was in conversation with having the value to move. That's what struck me because I actually sold Tank Dell in a league because I got a lot of Tank Dell. And just before this trade happened, and I shopped into everyone in the league, not because I want rid of Tank Dell, but because I got a lot and this team needed something else. I was looking for running backs essentially or late first values where I could trade up here, there. And I couldn't get late first. And the only trade that went through that was kind of around that value was Austin Eckler on the 206. So, like, his value was already not being felt in Dynasty, and it already put me on the maybe I'm interested in going and getting even more Tank Dell somewhere. And I think now that it's going to get easier, if you know what I mean. That's my question to you, Zach. When something like this happens, if you go send offers on Tank Dell, everyone's going to be trying to sell high. You've almost got to like bait a trade. You've got to find that person in your league with Tank Dell who now believes there's no more slot work available because Nico Collins must now take the slot because there's no way Nico Collins can be bad. And justifying it that way, if you know what I mean. You kind of got to find that guy.
To me, this is the point. It's tricky because it's still too fresh for Tank Dell to have depreciated. No. But he's going to, because this week the cycle of podcasts are going to talk about how Stephon Diggs is there, Nico Collins is there, Dell is now the third target. Is there going to be enough to go around? And so you've got to wait just a little bit for this to play out before you start making Tank Dell offers, because people are still riding the Tank Dell rookie season and haven't got this new information in air quotes, air grammar. We like the air grammar, but that to me is there's a fine line between jumping in too early and waiting for that cycle of podcasts to come through and just dump on Tank Dell before you go in and say, oh, well, I'll give you, the 109 or 110 or whatever for Tank Dell.
I think you got to give it some breathing room at best. I don't think there's a one-fit-all approach, but I do think if we start sending offers, it's not going to go well. but at least give it some breathing room. Dave, my main take is the major effect, and it's a minor one, is that Josh Allen he's still the same place. I didn't move him in my ranks, but I'm a little less certain about his 2024 outcome, whether he can exactly beat Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts in terms of points per game. Like, there's a little wiggle room there now, because can argue all we like whether it's wide receiver or quarterback, but it is both at some level. And he's now bad. Not in the same narrative I'm hearing in my timeline. There are no good wide receivers there. Look, it must be Khalil Shakir. It must be Curtis Samuel. No. Yes, it might mean that the second year of Dalton Kincaid's career is looking brighter, but it should have been already, because he should be doing better the further he gets into his career, if you know what I mean. We should have already been. Again, most of the changes I would make, I've already made because they're reasonable expectations. Kincaid should have been expected to do better if we think he's good, and I think he's pretty good. I think my main takeaway from everything I'm reading away outside of that is that Buffalo was tired with Stephon Diggs, and they've had a good wide receiver for so long, they've forgotten how hard it is to get that good of a wide receiver.
Yeah.
I think the NFL does this. So, like, they're replaceable, they're irreplaceable, whether they're paying bajillions or just getting rid of someone they just personally have a distaste for now. Because I was looking at it, 13 wide receivers since 2015 have come out who've had 2 top 12 seasons. And before you say they can get another one in the draft, I think they can this year. But do remember that 32 teams tried to get a Stephon Diggs in the draft last year, and maybe 2 teams managed something like it. Puka, yes. Addison, maybe. Even Addison, maybe could have something like that career. And since 2015, only 13 have been found, including Diggs. Like, it's not as replaceable to be that ISO piece, to be that true dominance of a receiving offense. Whether Diggs is that or isn't anymore, and we can have that conversation. I think he is, or at least we should more expect him to be than not. Put it that way. I think the idea you would get him away because he doesn't counter negative things people say about it. That's really underrating exactly how hard it is to find a wide receiver that good.
Yeah.
Not that Josh Allen's going to be terrible. The team will now suck, but it will be harder without a Stephon Diggs. Although apparently, interpersonally, it will be easier. They've made that bet. So I think, honestly, that's what's going on. It makes me feel better about the idea it's not Diggs dropping off. Nothing statistically suggests he's dropped off, for example. But it's nice to know the team had some other, what you could see a GM talking himself into. He's too difficult, and this is a good wide receiver draft class, so I'll just get another one. I actually think there are some good ones in this class, but we think that every year. And again, only 13 of them have worked out. Some of them were drafted a lot like Stephon Diggs after the 3rd round, and some of them were unexpected. Many of them failed that we drafted in the 1st round, 2nd round, the NFL and Dynasty. We get it wrong a lot, and we find the right one only 13 times every 10 years. So, like, maybe it's going to be a tougher order than they think, if that's the reasoning. But anyway, outside of that, again, CJ Stroud should have already been where everyone's saying he should now be after his rookie season. So that's cool. And that's the Nico, Tank, and Stephon Diggs. It's now Stephon Diggs' backfield wide receiver room. It's Diggs, and where else does everyone fit in? That would be my expectation. And I think he eats into the isolated piece, the main function of the downfield offense, out of Nico Collins a lot more than he does the Dell ran in the slot 67% of the time or something like that. He was working on the outside and downfield as well. Both are going to make room for Diggs, as it were. But I think it's much easier to see Dell's role changing the least with the addition of Diggs. But everyone's going to make that argument for the player they prefer, to be honest with you. And we don't know what the team's actually going to try and do, since both Nico and Dell can run in the slot, like all good talented wide receivers can play somewhat everywhere. But I think Dell's skill set is a little more versatile around what Stephon Diggs would likely, or has done in the past, do for Houston. Ultimately, yeah, it's positive news for CJ Stroud, although I don't know. I can get more positive on my expectations for him this year. You're a little more hesitant on CJ Stroud, I remember. Not that you were hesitant, just a little bit, hey, he's not in that top tier. And I was like, yeah, that's true, but like, isn't this... I felt like there was a little more hesitancy from you about his expectation.
No, I think to me, he's not in the top tier because the top tier is literally Allen, Mahomes.
Yeah, it's Allen, Hurts, Mahomes.
But like in that, like he's in that second group,
and he was
right
after it.
Yeah. And he was, I mean, he coming out last year, it was literally half a point out of 90 points separating him and Young. Like
it's hard to feel great, but you got it right.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously I'd rather have had Stroud be the half a point above, but like I still think Bryce Young is a good quarterback, even though he hasn't shown that at the NFL. I think the things that he does well, he was not allowed to do this past year, and he may never be allowed to do them. I mean, you got a short, a narrow window of being a quarterback and not producing at the NFL level before they replace you, and that, like, I totally get that. But yeah, I mean, CJ Stroud is fantastic. He is in that second tier, the tier of quarterbacks that you want to have rostered, you want to have on your team. I still think Josh Allen has the overall advantage, even without like they're going to put somebody out there as a wide receiver. They're probably going to draft a wide receiver. My guess is they take one in the first round. This is the class
to do it, to be fair. All my talk of how irreplaceable, I mean, not irreplaceable. They're not less replaceable than Josh Allen, for example. Like, he is a rarer thing and a better thing. And I think the offense will still be great, obviously. And that would be my expectation. But, I mean, they can just spread the ball out a lot. Dalton Kincaid can get a little bit bumped. It doesn't mean I immediately think he's a top 3, but, I mean, it was kind of in his range of outcomes anyway. Top percentile, and the targets can diffuse. I do have more concern because I remember Diggs being a big part of that elevation of Josh Allen's game.
Yes,
and with he's not someone that can sustain this production without some of that ability coming from his receivers. So I don't think he became more accurate. I think he did improve exponentially better than anyone else ever has. Credit to him, but I think Diggs helped a little bit, and that's now gone. I don't think he rose to that level, and now Diggs is gone, and he's just at that level. I think he'll sink down a bit. I think he'll be less accurate. I think he'll be less effective as a passer without that replaced.
But I also think that part of that growth is, I mean, it wasn't just Diggs.
It wasn't just like I said, he definitely improved. Yeah,
that promoted that growth. Like, he got Diggs, but he also worked with a quarterback coach. He cleaned up a lot of his, I mean, his mechanics,
and the team built for it, and they were again.
So again,
a lot of that improvement was not Diggs, to be clear, but I do think he was part of it a little bit.
But you know,
that little bit's gone.
This is my favorite thing ever, where all of a sudden you are acknowledging the simpatico, the receiver and the quarterback impacting each other. I love it, because there was a long time where you were like, nah, there's no interaction there. The receiver is good, the quarterback is good.
Said that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So Dave, we've got a lot of thoughts rolling around there. Mostly, like, again, to look at my ranks, I don't see many things to change. But again, ranks aren't really how I play fantasy. It's more like we're doing right now, trying to gauge where people are going to land and where we would like to go with that direction. The psychology of fantasy football, as Leo Pasiga and Zach like to describe it. I like to think of it as just value and the market and what my league mates think, and trying to not take advantage because you're trying to do good trades for both teams or good moves for both teams, but trying to see which direction I want to lean that might get me more success more often. Right now, my initial thought is I don't think there's much you can do with that Allen value. I think if Tank starts to tank, I might have a little interest there, because a little cheap rookie prospect sophomore year prospects suddenly devalued for reasons that aren't to do with them. They're interesting. As always, the old guy that everyone's going to hate on, Diggs, not Tyreek Hill, by the way. Yeah, I always have a little more interest in that old guy anyway. But I think the rocket to the moon for Houston is going to carry Diggs' value at least through. So I don't think there's going to be a big window. I don't see a lot to take advantage of. It's the kind of thing you wish you could have seen coming. And a few people have shared that they were looking at Houston saying they were going to add elite wide receiver. Yeah, but that didn't tell you to go trade for anyone in Buffalo or to not trade away Houston receivers specifically until after the trade, did it? But a lot of people saw that there was a window there for Houston to do something, just not what. But it's the type of thing that's hard to take advantage of outside of knowing your league mates. If someone's big, like CJ Stroud or a Houston fan, now's a really good time to go take advantage of him. But not take advantage, but kind of take advantage of him a little bit. And if anyone in the league has been waiting to cut the knees out of Josh Allen, there might be a window there to go get a Josh Allen, but I don't think that's going to happen in a lot of places. So it's really about your league mates more than anything else. Market wide, I think everything's going to do this. And then to get attention, someone's going to put Dell outside the 96 and Stephon Diggs inside the top 3, but that's mostly attention seeking. I think how it's going to affect most of our leagues is going to come down to if your league mates are going to follow those crazy ideas because they think big moves boldly, which is fine, it can work, but it's going to come down to who's in your league. I can't see any market wide. I would be trying this in most leagues kind of a deal from it yet, but the draft might change a lot. Like you say, Buffalo probably are going to try to draft a wide receiver somewhere. That would be a good thing to see or think about before the draft starts. Houston's probably now set for that position. But yeah, those are my main thoughts on it. Am I missing anything there, Zach? Probably a lot. That's what I'm saying. I'm probably missing any key. I don't have a single thing that I want to go and approach. It's just feel like your league mates see what they're talking about in the group chat, basically.
I mean, I think the big takeaway right now is that window for Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel. And even Dalton Kincaid. Not that I dislike Dalton Kincaid
a little bit,
but like Dalton Kincaid is not a top 5 tight end. Dalton Kincaid is a top 10 tight end.
Okay,
Peter, you cannot figure out a way to put Dalton Kincaid in the top 10. You can't. I guarantee it. So you've got Kelsey's got to still be above him. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Andrews.
Yep.
Okay. Laporta.
Kittle.
Bowers is above him. I don't care that Bowers is not even drafted yet. Bowers is above him. Probably Pitts is above him. Hawkinson is above him. So now we're at 8. And people are putting Dalton Kincaid up into the top 5. So those 3 players in that Buffalo offense that have taken a bump because of vacated targets that don't exist. That's the real kind of meat if you have those players on your team.
Okay, I'm just saying Dalton Kincaid is a tight end 7 right now.
Yeah, right. But
I'm not really thinking ranks because
not today.
There isn't 10 tight ends.
Today.
There's 1.
He was
2, and then there's a bunch, all kind of similarly. So I mean,
he was top 7, but today he's higher than that because Diggs is gone and now there are vacated targets. That's what I'm saying, Peter.
Yeah, that would be the problem. Not whether you can get him in the top 10 or not. If people are really going to bump him up, like there are tiers. Let's call them tiers, even though tiers are fairly bleh. I don't think he moves tiers, and I think you're right that this could move him up a tier, in which case he would be an immediate sell. Yeah. It's time. The time to grind. Sorry, I ran on. That does after this much talk doesn't have the same impact, Dave, but that's my fault. I will try and do better for you. That was a good one. BW, with the news today, Nuka Collins on the 109. I was kind of bored. He's in that group of I would probably a vet on a competitive team and probably take the flyer on a and 70% of teams that you're neither building or losing. Right now, I think his value probably decreases if it changes at all for the people that have him rostered. I think the 109 would be a really solid trade for Nico Collins right now. And if you're not winning, I would probably rather have the 109. It's not a 70% of leagues thing. I think in most leagues, I'd probably rather have the 109 right now because I can do stuff with that. And I don't have to wait to games to roll by and hope and then see the points and then trade him. So I think the 109 is a little more versatile right now and I can do more with it. Do I think the guy you get at 109 does what Nico Collins did last year? I think there's a 25% chance. But I think people will pay more for that 25% chance than Nico Collins for the next 3 months. So that's why I would lean the pick. Yeah. Is that a good? Yeah. I think that does.
No, I think it's the fungibility of the pick. I don't mind it. And you're right. If you're a bottom half team,
even if you're in the middle,
well, that's bottom half, like half down. If Nico Collins doesn't
between 40 and 60%, I have to insist on this that we get over 50% quotient.
But like, if Nico Collins' points are not actively helping you next season, then the 109 is a better asset to have. And potentially either you move the 109 for something or someone else, or you draft one of these players. Because to me, and we've talked about this, there's 7 players. There are 3 quarterbacks, 2 wide receivers, a tight end that I'm really excited about. Like actively, like these players should either be great or maintain value. And then you've got a group of 3 more wide receivers that I really like in Odunze, Xavier Worthy, and Brian Thomas. So that 109 gets you in that range.
I would say, you got to read your league. Sometimes the 9 can get you one of those 7 players, but I'm not really happy until I get to the 7. So when I see the 9, I'm like, I would try. That gets me a lot closer to trading into the top 7 or for a different player. Just to reiterate this, if you're a top 4 or 5 team, Nico Collins, you think Nico Collins is the 2 that's a poor description of the wide receiver courts for an offense, but you think he'll still be more dominant in targets, let's say, or role than Tank Dell. That's a bet you have to make. And that's the other part that makes me a little more nervous. I just go with the fungibility there of the pick. Diggs helps the other receivers. And you mentioned Joe Mixon on the team. I don't think this takes away from the players who are going to be the main parts of the offense. So if you're a top 4 or 5 team, assuming Nico Collins is your wide receiver 3 at best, maybe 4, because you probably didn't enter last year with him expecting him to be your 1, that means that's a really good 3 or 4 to have, and you probably just hold on to him. If you're a top 3, 4, top 5 to Zach's point team, it's probably worth just keeping Nico Collins. But again, most of us are going to be outside of that range if we knew the way the season was going to roll out. And that's why I say most teams are more interested in the pick. But again, if you're one of those teams, Nico Collins is a really good 3-4, and Diggs probably helps him instead of hurts him. I think it helps Tank Dell, but you kind of have to place your money there. There's no way to get inside we're not going to be part of the planning of the offense, so we can't really put a weight on the scales there, and I think the rest is going to be narrative. Still haven't made a trade in leagues. I made a couple, not many. I keep meaning to get a little more active. I do it in waves. I was framing this for my sleeper chat. Don't engage me in a debate because I'm happy to talk, but I probably will have gone out of the sending and receiving wave. Just send a counter, easiest way. Because I'll get it in my head. I want to make a trade in a league, and I'll focus on a league for that day, and I'll send out a bunch of trades, and I'll get counters where I get counters, and I'll counter those, and they either fizzle out or they don't, and then I move on to another league or another hobby. So I've been through a few of those phases at least, but I've only really seen success in 2 or 3. leagues. I've managed to get 1 or 2 trades done and a few counters that ended up going nowhere. I consider a counter and like when you get a back and forth, that's a successful initiative into the trade market. Just getting some sort of interest in maybe working out a trade, in my experience, is positive. But yeah, not as many as I'd like. So, my dudes, not much, Genji. Please see you. Going to send the 110 for ETN. That would be a steal. Is ETN's value really low right now? I've seen a few things and ranks like ETN for this guy, which runs you your value more. And the fact that they would consider that a fair comparison made me think maybe ETN's too low.
we are in
like, I'm not a huge ETN guy, but
we're in a really weird place for running backs. Like ETN is currently like running back 9. Like I would do that for ETN. I would also float that out for Jacobs plus. Like that,
Jacobs is an interesting one.
Yeah. I mean, even somebody like Javonte Williams, who we liked a couple years ago, we had the injury, came back. There's like potential in that. Like again, you're getting a plus back with that 110. But these are all players that I like more than the running backs that are coming in this class. I think they're in more concrete situations, that they're better running backs, and that the 110 is about where you're going to start seeing people think about running backs in Superflex league. So I like that. I think we're still at the old guy are going to be productive.
I'm looking for these are the types of running backs I want, but don't get on my team because I go up or down. And so I've traded for Najee Harris, Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, because Austin Eckler has fallen well below this kind of ranking and value. And I'm like, undrafted free agent that can score in the top 5. Let's go. I'll believe till I die. So I try Bijan Robinson, or I pretend to try because no one's going to trade me Bijan Robinson. I try Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey if I'm on a very successful team, maybe. And then I'm like, where's Najee Harris? Where's Aaron Jones? Where's Austin Eckler? Where's Swift? And so I never get this good section of value, which is, like you're saying, ETN. Jonathan Taylor isn't exciting right now, right next to ETN according to DLF. Like, I mean, if you get him for a late first-round pick, that's winning as well. I think Williams is slightly like that's a lot lower to me. I was disappointed last year. All the volume was there, the opportunity, and I kept saying in my weekly column, like, with this role, he should really do better. And he did it for like 1 week and then stopped again, and I was disappointed. But you're right. There's some second-round type flyers I might take, but I don't know for a late first. But yeah, that running back, what is it, 5 to 11-ish? Some really interesting players there. You get
15
with a late
16.
first round pick and have multiple top 12 years and just be like, I don't know. They gave this to me. It was fun. They drafted the next McCall Hardman. It was weird, but I did it, and now I'm winning. It's cool. Anthony Richardson, the 109, the 110, the 111, or the 103 Gibbs and Dell. The 103 side. Thank you. I'm assuming this is super flex, but I'm a little out on the Richardson thing. So I'll take the 3.
Like, I think Richardson is fine, and his value is we're doing the thing where we run the value past the point where you can get a return on it. Where Richardson is right now, the QB 8, right? He's going ahead of Caleb Williams. He's going ahead of Dak Prescott. He's going ahead of Jordan Love. He's going ahead of Kyler Murray. He's going ahead of Tua. So, yeah, I would rather have the Gibbs, the Dell, and then you're either getting Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, or Marvin Harrison Jr. at 103.
It's pretty good.
I'll do that. And you can have the 109, 110, 111. You can mess around with whoever it is, Jonathan Brooks or Blake Corum or Brian Thomas Jr. or what, like, have fun.
Yeah, have fun in that not really a first round pick range.
Oh, and then we just added a first. Let's do that. That's even better.
No, well, they did remove the one. They removed something from the 109. They removed the 109. and you get a 25 first. I prefer this trade. Like, I would do both. This is a better trade, in my opinion.
Yep.
Dave, JJ Zachariason said yesterday on a pod that Jerome Burton is his favorite wide receiver sleeper. Peter, I think you said last week that your model hates him. Probably. It sounds like something I'd say. Zach, not sure if you had a chance to review him yet.
So, yeah, I actually watched him. We're going to talk about him tomorrow night on the Dynasty Dummies Hootenanny. But Burton is not my favorite sleeper, but he's all right. I got him. He's in the top, I don't know, 17 or 18. Like, he's not a bad player. And this is an interesting class because the middle class of this group is really wide. Like, there's not much to separate. I was talking to J Mike about this the other night. It's usually I have a top tier, a second tier. There are a couple other players who score above a 70 out of the 110, and then it gets into the 60s and 50s pretty quickly. This class hangs around in the mid to low 70s for a long time. Like, there are a bunch of players that are like, man, I'm interested in what they do. As far as Burton, his counting stats are ugly. He was at Georgia, he was at Alabama, both places run. I think his best year was 2022, where he had 40 receptions, 677 yards, 7 touchdowns. Although this past year, I guess he had 39 for 798 and 8. But none of that's really going to like trip the needle. But I think he is exceptionally strong in route. He plays through contact better than any player in this class, except for maybe Marvin Harrison Jr., which is saying something because Marvin Harrison Jr. is just an absolute freak of nature. Like, he does basically everything you could possibly want. I think Burton can add yards after the catch, especially against zone or on screen. So when he's got a little extra space, he can kind of ramp up that speed. He's got pretty good vision. He can be quick, but I don't think he's consistently quick. So it makes him better with off coverage. So he's better when he's not being pressed, even though he will beat press sometimes, but not consistently. On the downside, I think he's not a great separator versus man coverage. Part of that is, not the quickness laterally. On deep throws, I think he often gets more concerned with defenders than he is with catching the ball. So, like, his physicality becomes a negative because he's looking to initiate contact and he's looking to hit the defender. And sometimes he forgets that he's actually a receiver and he's supposed to make a catch. We already talked about this, but he's inconsistent with effort, sometimes inconsistent with his understanding of where he needs to be in order to facilitate the quarterback. And I think that on the blocking side of things, he often overruns blocks on the outside and he leaves his teammates with the ball vulnerable. So, like, if he's blocking for a run or if he's blocking for a screen, he ends up overrunning that block and then his player gets loose and makes a tackle. But, like, he's not a bad player, and I see some of the upside there. They're just more. There are other players that I'm more interested in, and I like sleeper's a terrible word, but like I'm more interested in Javon Baker. I'm more interested in Ricky Pearsall. I'm more interested in Tez Walker. I'm even more interested in a player like Jamari Thrash than I am in Burton, even though Burton is not a bad player.
I was going to say my only issue with this, I love JJ, but I don't know what he means by that. Like, I get that that's a thing that's makes it attractive, and he's very good at the content creator thing as well as fantasy football, but I don't know what that sentence fucking means. Like, that's how, like, what does that mean? What does it mean to be a sleeper before there's ranks or a draft or really consensus on who the players are that might be drafted? Like, I like Thrash. I have him in my top 6 or so. I haven't heard a single word about him. Is he a sleeper if I have him ranked that high? And he was that productive? Not really. He probably should just be ranked higher, but no one knows about him yet. But they will by the draft. But also there's warts on his profile. Like, I'm not in love with Thrash, but relative to what I'm seeing, I like him a lot. I really like Malachi Corley, but I hear about him constantly as a sleeper. So is he really a sleeper if he's constantly being spoken about as, a borderline top 12 wide receiver? Same with Ricky Parcell. I like him a lot, but he's constantly being spoken about as that guy who's under the commonly known top 3 NFL draft picks. But is he really a sleeper at that point? What do we mean by that? Lad McConkey could well be a sleeper, but if I wake up and the first tweet I don't see is not about Lad McConkey, it'll be the first time since the rookie season started, so I'm not sure that counts. I don't know what he means by that. It sounds like I like this player. I don't think that anyone else is going to like, and he's not going to be drafted well. But that's saying you like something that you shouldn't like, so that can't be what it means. Thrash comes to mind, but I'm really worried that he wasn't as big a part of the offense as he was of the receiving game. If that makes sense. I like to compare yards per team attempt and receiving yards per team attempt, just as like a final, how much of the offense were you compared to how much of the receiving game were you? And that turns up. One that I've heard nowhere and probably shouldn't, but does stand out a little bit to me, and I just keep seeing the name when people ask about sleeper, is Taj Washington.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's a thing because I may have made him up, but he's in my data. He played at the USC in the Pac-12, which doesn't seem like nothing, and he was pretty productive at 1.7 receiving yards per team pass attempt for his career. Like, he seems like he was pretty consistently good, and I don't hear about him at all. I'm like, maybe he could do something in the NFL.
Peter, wait, you got to wait, because this week we're talking 6 wide receivers. Next week, we're talking Taj Washington with the last set of wide receivers.
Well, so that's the thing. I just haven't caught. I got to wait for you. Yeah. I think Thrash is the one that stands out to me. Again, I do have a fairly ambiguous concern in terms of his role on the offense versus his role in the receiving game. But like, he clearly stands out like as a top 10 producer in a really strong class in terms of his raw statistics. Not his raw statistics, but like his overall success as a producer in college versus everyone else. And I literally just checked. I was like, no, it must just not be my timeline. He's like wide receiver 19 on DLF. So like, I honestly think not many people are looking at him at all. I've mentioned him a few times while talking to you and other people, and everyone just kind of blanks me. I'm like, guy had 2.1 yards per route run, came from Pac-12. No, everyone's got a blank stare. So maybe that means he's terrible, but production-wise, I kind of like him. So yeah, maybe that guy. But I love JJ. But as far as Burton goes, I don't know. I have to listen to that podcast to see what he likes. He does show up like 1.6 receiving yards per team attempt. He also has a bigger part of the receiving offense than the offense entirety, which isn't terrible. 2.2 yards per route run, which is pretty good, coming from the SEC in Alabama. That's all pretty good, but none of it's particularly better than Thrash or Franklin or.
Yeah, but that's what I mean, though. There's like this huge plateau of these guys could be okay.
17% target share. That was Franklin. Sorry, Karen. Yeah, there's a plateau of these players could be pretty good, and I don't know how to distinguish between them. Outside of what I've done already in my ranks. Like, I really don't know what sleeper means anymore. Which is a guy that I don't have ranked particularly highly that I should. I don't know what that means. Talk about Jerome Burton. Yeah, I got.
You did it.
I could look at my notes on him, but I said my rank hates him. Model thinks he's fine. Like, it puts him in that range of pretty decent producer. Again, 1.6 receiving yards per team attempt for his college career proper. He's coming out at age 23, which is perfectly fine. His age adjustments don't seem to be doing particularly well for him, so I don't think he was over the curve for a lot. 13% target share for his career total. Definitely not a slot player, which is one of the reasons I won't like a profile, because it's kind of an outlandish hit rate. Like, you're like a god in fantasy if you're an outside receiver and hitting, or hopefully you'll get some McCall Hardman, Gabe Davis weeks at best. And so I don't like trying to go in on that range of outcomes. like an A dot of 16 for his career. Proper two, he's a true outside receiver, it seems. I think you could argue that's more about landing spot, I guess, in the NFL. Because to be fair, something I have heard, and I do think is true after researching it a little bit, is it's harder to replace a decent outside target than a decent inside target, just in terms of moving the chains in the NFL. Like a Tyler Boyd, even though he's less replaceable, is taking more replaceable targets, if that makes sense. Whereas Jerome Burton, if he's capable of playing in the NFL, is a less easy to replace asset. If you can be successful on the outside in the NFL, it's a harder to acquire skill set. And so that's potentially exciting, but he's lower volume, lower success compared to, you know, the actual fantasy hits in that role in his time in college. But he's definitely playing in an interesting place, coming from an interesting school. And he was doing decently if you look at the broad numbers. But again, 13% target share, mediocre member of the receiving game, and a below average member of the team offense proper for a guy with that much air under the ball. So, yeah, I hate him. But that's just because I like to love hate it, because I like yes-no answers at the end of a process. Give all the context first, but at the end of the day, I'm about making a draft pick or not for my own personal sanity. And Burton would be I'm probably drafting running backs and tight ends in that range. Whoa, that's crazy, Dave.
Because they both went Burton within
Bills Mafia. Zach, where is your shirt from? I was going to ask about that too. I haven't seen that one before.
Oh, it's funny you mentioned. So Casey Kasem at the Casey Kasem started a t-shirt website called SundayDreamersClub.com. She's got some fantastic shirts. This is I'm in my fantasy football era, and she has a whole bunch that are great, but this one I had to have. So Dave, I'm glad you asked about that. I'll always plug Casey.
Yeah, Casey's awesome too. Coolest person I know. Like, if there was a scale of cool to not cool, me on the bottom, Casey be on top. Synergy. And I think it's a good sign we have similar interests and questions. That probably means the Dynasty market's heating up a bit. When common news unites us in similar questions, you'll probably find a little more activity in your league, I find. What is Dell's worth? After this trade, I haven't moved him too much, but I will, like a late first, anywhere from 8, 9, 10, 11 was around about where I was, but I was hedging the over. And now after this trade, I'm like definitely in this era. I won't go lower, but I'm definitely not going higher if trying to acquire. And if I got higher, like the 109 plus a second, I'd probably send it away pretty easily. I'd probably send Dell away pretty easily. A third? Yeah. Probably not, but maybe.
To me, he's a low end first, because again, I think that there are a couple players. I know you're at the 8 and you're like, oh, it's Dell. I think that there are a couple players that I'd rather have, and I know that the community would rather have Odunze than Dell. Like, there's no question. Yeah. My guess is
I think he's going higher than 8, which means someone else I like more. Yeah, you're right.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
So, how's he going?
No, you're right. You're right. When you're right, you're right. Even if you do rank by height.
And the other thing, like JJ McCarthy, when he gets drafted in the top, so like there are 3 quarterbacks I like. JJ McCarthy is not one of them, but he's going to be drafted highly, so he's going to end up in. So now you've got 9. 10,
right, we might add players to that number just because they're not on.
So this was the issue that I had, Peter, and I don't. This is not to call you out, because I love the show and I love the theory, and I think you and I are on the same page, even if you didn't quite come all the way to vocalize. But like each class is so different that when you give it there are 4 players. Yeah, there are, but that's over the broad scale. But like in an individual, like this class is so deep. Most classes, you're like, oh, there are 3 guys. This class, it's like, man, there are 7, 8, maybe 9, 10 after the draft, because they're going to get draft capital, and it's wild.
And some of them, to the
Yeah.
To the
And
point I
some
think
of
you're
it's
making.
there
Some
for
of them
fun.
will be second round picks. Some of them will be late first, and they're
Yeah.
still in your
Yeah.
top. Yeah. That's a good point. I want to buy for the 201. Dell or the 201?
Oh,
Yeah,
I'd rather have
it's Dell.
I'd rather have Dell. Yeah.
Yeah. Who's hurt more by the Diggs signing? Nico. Well, I think I've ran it on this one. Do you have any other thoughts? I think it's mostly going to be narrative, as best as I can surmise from the history of who goes up and who goes down. I think Diggs helps the team, but there is a conservation of targets, as someone used to say, at a certain point. Like not everyone can be in the top 12.
Right.
Diggs helps the team. Someone else is going to get a benefit, not a deficit. But it's true, one's going to end up being Tyler Boyd to Higgins and Chase. Like, still good when necessary, still good for fantasy, but it's less often. I'd rather have Dell as more likely coming out on top than Nico. But again, I'm suffering from post-hype, post-breakout arc Nico problems. Like, I can admit to myself, Nico did the unthinkable last year, and I have to adjust as much as possible. But like Dell did well, and I thought he was going to do well. Nico did badly for 3 years, as I thought he was going to do, and I have some bias here, and I think the rest is narrative.
I think it probably ends up being Dell that gets hurt more, and the reason I say that is because Nico Collins ended up out targeting by a little bit Dell, being a little bit better in the red zone. And if you add a top player, which we both agree that Diggs is the top player, the squeeze goes down and Dell's the guy getting squeezed. I think. But again, you're also going to see more. You're going to be more efficient. Like he's going to see the third corner or a slot corner. You know, you're going to see different coverages. You're going to see easier coverages. It's going to be just an absolute bear to defend Houston, and so it mostly offsets. But I do think Dell probably is the guy who loses out on targets more than Nico Collins is.
It's a fair question what I would do. And the answer is I wouldn't answer this question. Instead, I would think I would add to either of them to get Diggs. And instead of doing that, I'd actually rather try and get Stroud. Like, that's my fantasy approach. Like, you're not always going to be able to do that. And if you've got Tank Dell, that doesn't sound as helpful as it might. But it does. It tells you what I would be trying to do with the value of Dell, wherever it lands in my league. I'm either trying to move him for something else, or if it's about Houston, I'm trying to get into Stroud. So what do I have to add? And Dell can be part of that trade to get Diggs or to move up the QB position to get into Stroud. Like, the changing landscape of Houston puts me in those are the two spots I want to end up in more often. Joe Mixon's an interesting point. That's a way you can sidestep the issue and also probably get a benefit of hopefully the team being really strong this year. Not that you want to trade Dell straight up for Joe Mixon, but it broadens your scope. It's not just about whether you've got Collins, got Diggs, which one do I go and get? The answer is probably try to adjust to the situation and try something different in your league, because it's too blunt. Like I said, if you just send offers on Dell that are lowball right now, people know what it's about. We're all united in this news. That's why we're all suddenly active again. And there's kind of something counterintuitive to action needs to be taken, so everyone's less likely to give you action. I always feel like someone you're trying to trade with is trying to make sure you don't get what you want, because there's an adversarial nature to trades in some ways. Like, they're trying to do something. I must thwart them, for I am in competition with them. And so instead, you try to find other avenues, which is Joe Mixon is interesting, or just try to generally tear up your quarterback position, which is something you could have done last week. It might not seem as aggressive or offensive on the recent news, although with all the BJ Stroud hype on the timeline, maybe it would. Yeah, it's not. To answer that question, isn't the best things I think we could be attempting to do in Dynasty in general. Any other possible trades we should be on the lookout for as a semi-likely trade? Tyreek, T. Higgins, Ayuk. I think that's a good question in the offseason in general that we've gone over a few times. I got a list. But again, it tends to be by position and team need. That's how I approach teams. What direction am I moving with this team? And then I go look at my league mates to see what might be available where I can make a trade offer that's pretty good for both of us, or we might think is pretty good for both of us. I'm trying to remember the name of the sheet. Sorry.
The problem with the trades at this point is the kind of
The rookie
figuring
draft.
out,
I was going to say the rookie draft is looming, and that's really the focus of the trade market right now, which kind of changes.
Yeah, and so like you may see teams heading into the draft make moves, but you're also like there are a lot of teams in cap purgatory, even though the salary cap went up this year. And so it's kind of the Diggs trade was almost a salary dump, or not a salary dump, but like a player dump. Like they kept the Bills are paying a lot of the salary for Houston, and they're just like, here, take them. And like San Francisco doesn't have much wiggle room, so I don't know that's an option with Ayuk. T. Higgins has already been franchise tagged. So yes, there are options with trading and reworking that deal, but it gets trickier the further we go into this and the fewer teams there are available to make the trade because of the salary cap issues for most of the teams.
I wonder why. So I was literally just wondering why my trade, when my value sheet doesn't flag Kyler Murray. I thought my rank of Kyler Murray would be infinitely better than everyone else's. I've got to update this, but right now it's not. The simple answer is ask me by position or depending on your interest, and you'll get a better list. But right now, the 4 players, let's say, I'll go to the obvious one, and that my rank suggests I should be sending it at trade offers on in most leagues, in most situations. It's Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Jordan Addison, and Saquon Barkley. Again, if you split it into positions, I've got things like, well, I'm going up or down. So at running back, outside of those top, like Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley, I'm really interested in Tank Bigsby. I'm really interested in the second-year disappointments from last year. Or the old guys. Austin Eckler is going to show up in my next update, I'm pretty sure.
Well, yeah, but I think what Richard is asking is like NFL trades, not who you're looking at.
Okay.
But I think he's looking at like players who could move. I hate speculating like that because we are rarely right.
Yeah. I really enjoy, because some people get it so, like Addison's got one out right now where he was suggesting that Houston could make a move at wide receiver. He's done some really good research to highlight this open pocket, as it were, for a wide receiver addition. And yet, despite that effort and him predicting it, the utility of it, again, without knowing the team or whether it was a draft pick or a trade for a draft pick in fantasy, the utility of it was essentially, hey, look how smart, because that was a really smart observation by Addison, but the ability to use it was, it's kind of wait and see. And I'm a straight to the quick with fantasy. Like, I spend way too much time on this, but if it's not actionable or I don't think I have an actionable edge, I mostly leave it to I'll do something when I see it. And Higgins is an obvious one, but I think, didn't we see that they signed him or something like that? They made sure of him for at least one more year. So, yeah, even when it looks likely, sometimes it doesn't happen. Sorry, Richard. I really don't NFL. I'm more fantasy.
Yeah.
Genji, we're in the great running back recession, guys. We really are. Actually, one more year and we'll be about on track to start seeing running backs coming in. If you're just basing it purely on trends, that's a pathetic way to predict draft picks. But like, we're nearly, wide receiver and running back have nearly equalized after the 2017 class. Just looking broad specs. Or to look at career arcs, the great running backs we've got right now have about 1-point-something years left in them on average. And then, to be fair, that could be spread out over 2 or 3 years. So, yeah, we're coming to the end of it, but don't expect it to end 2024, to be clear. Like that's actually pretty central part of the way I play Dynasty. As weird as it sounds, I find it one of the most consistent ways to know that wide receiver and running back talent kind of ebbs and flows. We're in an ebbing running back market. We're about to enter an ebbing wide receiver market, but not yet.
So, Genji, this, and I will plug Peter's show whenever I can because it's fantastic. But this is
Because you're my friend, and you feel bad if you don't. It's
no. It has no. You are very, very good at this. But this is a kind of a quasi evergreen episode or 4. But if you go back, Genji, and find the episodes that Peter and I did with Jacob Rickroad, who is at Clutch Fantasy, we talked about all of this and the cycles of this and how running back ebbs and flows and and you can almost predict the 8-year window, and it was 2017 when the big running back came in, and then we went down, and now here we are 2024. 2025 would be 8 years, and so it's an interesting kind of, I mean, it's obviously not hard and fast rules, but you can see the fluctuation, the ebbs and flows of running back production in the NFL, running back production for fantasy, and it's pretty spot on. So we're at the end of the recession. We've raised the interest rate. We got another class coming in. We're feeling better about
it. That's basically what it is. What's the most recent trade you gents have made? Austin Eckler and the 206 for Tank Dell. Just before, literally the day before. Just a coincidence. I didn't know it was coming or nothing. Wink, wink. No. It's just a coincidence. I was sending out Dell offers for about a week, and that's the one that got accepted. And it was kind of one of those, I woke up and went, oh, I got a trade. Oh. Yeah. Kind of moments, because I like Tank Dell a lot, but it was fine. It's pretty fair. Where are you at on Eckler now he's moved teams? I think I've asked you, and you're a little more shy.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to envision him having the goal line volume, red zone volume that he's had, and so like a lot of his production was buoyed by touchdowns, and we kind of expected that last year to regress, and it even did a little bit in the games that he played, but again, he's getting older. He's switched teams. He is probably not going to get the exact red zone usage. So I don't know. He's not a player that I'm actively avoiding, but I don't want to have to pay up. And I don't think you do at this point. I think you can kind of get him from, especially teams that are again middle of the league or worse. You probably can get him for, a second round pick or a second round pick plus something to add Eckler, and I don't mind doing that. But
what's your most recent trade?
I haven't made very many lately. I just offered 225 firsts that look to be mid and a second to try to get up to the 105 or 106.
I've said a lot of trading up to get into that tier trades. No, I haven't got there yet.
That's the one I just sent out, and I think it's a fair offer. I'm probably, if you look at value, I'm probably losing that a little bit. If you just take like a pick is a pick across classes, I also think I probably win that because this class is different, and the fifth pick is really a top two pick, a top pick in this class, but. Yeah, that's the one that I have,
but not look so far. Sorry.
Yeah. No, so but that's the latest one that I have gone after, and I think I got Fields for like a third and something too, which I'm happy about doing, but.
I thought I had pretty good chances of doing it in there. I've got the 2, the 10, and the 11. And I thought I could get another top 5 pick by trading the 10 and the 11 and add into it. And so far not. But I still got that one. Yeah. So far, I just suck at trades. EJD Kincaid was a rookie last year. Yes. He just needs 1 or 2 receptions a game more. Dangerous way of thinking, but okay. To be a top 5 tight end. I think he is now a lock for 200 points in 1 point PPR.
You're allowed to think that. I think he's another one of the tight ends that are in that glorious middle class of tight ends that are all the same. It's an army of row after row after row after row of nameless and faceless tight ends that come year after year after year after year. Hey, do you remember Gary Barnidge? But yeah,
I do. Do you remember? No, I don't. I don't remember his name. Yeah, jumped out of my head. That's how quick they come and go. Do you remember Darren Waller? There's one.
Yeah,
It
Charles
was
Clay.
multiple years.
Who was the Ebron?
I remember
Don't
the
sleep on
Cincinnati
Ebron.
guy. Oh, yeah, that took forever
Eifert.
to happen, and then it just died. Eifert, thank you. Yeah, touchdown man. I liked him though. Yeah.
But I mean, it is like Kincaid was fine. Like he was not bad, but people wanted Kincaid to be more than he was, and they're still propping him up, hoping that he will be. And he's not. He was not even like he wasn't even the main tight end target on his team when both tight ends were healthy. So he's good. He's fine. He's not a bad tight end, but he is a middle class tight end.
David Njoku had over 200 points last year. He's probably cheaper.
Yeah.
George Kittle is, and he should definitely be the better target. All of them except Kittle, with over 200 points last year, had over 120 targets.
Yeah.
I can't remember what Kincaid had last year. I'm interested now. Kincaid had 91. So we have to add 30 more targets to get kind of in that range.
Which, I mean, 91 is a decent year, but again, it's middle class tight ends.
Thrace going around to it in the NFL? No idea. Based on the complete lack of buzz, I'm assuming he's not showing up for people. But yeah, he's probably a late 2nd round pick if you want to take a flyer on a wide receiver. If the rookie draft was to happen now, which it's not going to. Reality-wise, based on the fact no one else seems to know who he is, he's probably a 3rd if I'm really speculating on wide receivers. And in this class, it might be an interesting thing to do, but normally that's too deep for me for wide receiver. But yeah, I thought Thrace was pretty good. How aggressive should we be in to acquire neighbors? Very. Again, to get into that top tier is really important. The top 2 wide receivers in this class, even more like aggressively trying to get those guys. Quarterbacks are a different issue in general. Superflex, we're always trying to get them, but I don't see, not to go on too long because I keep doing that. The quarterbacks in this class look really good, and we have more than one that looks really good, which again is relatively rare. Last year we had 2 and Richardson, for example, and that was pretty good. This year we have 3 that people like and more that people think are going to be drafted top 10. So it's a really good quarterback class, but I only see one that belongs in a true, that's got like CJ Stroud, like upside for me, and that's Caleb Williams. But my quarterback process is limited, and Zach says there should be at least one more, and I tend to trust him and other people on quarterback pretty vividly. Travis as well, as another example, someone I'll listen to if they say they have higher range of outcomes than I expect, I'll expand my number. But the top 2 wide receivers in this tier are different than most years. Like last year, we had a really good class. I was really excited about Addison. The top 2 wide receivers in this class are more exciting. Like 2 better than like the guy was joint 1 last year. So those 2 wide receivers outside of the value of the quarterback position and Caleb Williams seeming to have that pretty, even for a joker like me to see upside in fantasy. The top 2 wide receivers in this class are a different kind of thing. And I would aggressively target them. That was still too long, but I'm going to stop talking now. So look at you. Please.
No, like, and I agree. Like last year, there were 5 players that we were like that we really liked. You know, there were, yeah, and so that because there were two quarterbacks, and then Richardson kind of got pushed up in there because of his draft capital and because of his rushing. You had the two running backs and you had two receivers. This draft class, and even the two receivers were a different tier of receiver than the players in this group. Like Neighbors would be a wide receiver one in most classes. Neighbors is a top 10, top 9 receiver that I have graded out in all of the receivers that I've graded since 2017. So you're talking 25 a year. So out of 175 receivers or 200 receivers, he is top 10. That's pretty darn good. So yeah, like I would try to move up to go get it.
Yeah, outside of Caleb Williams, these are two wide receivers I would draft over the quarterback, maybe 2, definitely 3. But again, I'm going to listen to other people on quarterback and see if I have to stop being so excited. And last year, that's relatively rare for me. You probably have to know my process a little bit to know how exaggerated that is. So it's not a good way to make my point, but it's the way I'm making it. So there you go. Hell yeah, Tash. Yeah, I like Tash Washington. It's pretty good. Easily as good as most of the people, if not better statistically. Not that means too much. And most people are hyping as their sleepers. Anyway. Digging deep, thoughts on Anthony Gould, rookie wide receiver.
I have no
as
thoughts.
in a rookie this year. I have no idea. No thoughts.
Yeah, he's not a name that I have heard. He is not a player that I have watched.
Yeah, I don't have him. Assuming he's not CFB, or I've yet to add him. So sorry. Hi, should I draft CJ Stroud 1-on-1? I'll hang up and listen. You should do literally anything you want to do. That's my personal. Yeah. Not everyone. Everyone should follow the rules except you.
Write some more. Write some more blogs like that. That's my favorite.
Yeah,
I got another one yesterday.
Stop playing fantasy. Just write, could you? Jeez. In a Superflex redraft, sure. Shout out to Casey Keenum, always. I think that's a goat emoji. That's pretty cool. What is JSN worth? He's in that late first conversation. But at this point, he's a rookie player in his second year, so he's a little less tempting than some of the rookie flyers. Again, like Zach said, some of my top 7 might fall into that range. And JSN's that kind of value, but I'm not so sure I'm interested in the pick if it's outright, because like we talked about with fungibility, it's a little more tradable to a few more teams. But that's around the value. Yeah. If I have JSN, I'd probably shop it for that too. Yeah. Which sucks. Like I say, I think I missed a little on JSN last year. Start 10, Superflex, have CJ Stroud and Bajon, and that's it. It's pretty good though. The 101, the 103, the 105, the 107, the 108. That's okay. And I think you're okay in this draft class to only have 2 elite tier assets and then 8 out of the top 8 picks, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. And yeah, I think 2 or 3 of those are going to be great. You're going to multiply the number of great assets you have pretty easily. So what you can also not stop moving. You got 25 to think about.
What you're going to do is you're going to draft.
Mostly.
Yeah.
I mean, I might egg basket this. You don't want to put all your eggs in that same basket, but I would still put most of them in this basket. Okay.
I mean, you go Harrison at 1.
Yeah.
You go whichever quarterback doesn't get drafted at 2 at 3. You go Neighbors or Bowers at 5.
I think Neighbors is gone by then, but yeah.
I mean, if Neighbors is gone, then you got Bowers at 5.
Yep.
And then 7, you're looking at Odunze or, pick your flavor. Brian Thomas. Like what?
Thomas.
Yeah. So it's nice.
Matt Harmon at Reception Perception is now saying that Rome belongs right there with Neighbors and Marvin. I've heard it before. I've been called a few things, actually, for not having it that way. I've been thinking about profiling the 2014 class because I wasn't profiling at that point. I was just another redraft player about to become obsessed with Dynasty because of the 2014 class, like most of us. And here's why. I can't tell you that Rome Odunze isn't the Odell Beckham of this class, or the Mike Evans for that matter, the guy you get at the end or towards the end of the first round who turns into one of those guys. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that is in his range of outcomes. He looks like a really good player in this really good class. I like him. That's what the second tier is for me this year, with Worthy, with Brian Thomas. I don't think I know I can't say for sure he is going to be or is more likely to be. That's Neighbors and Harrison. And so the idea he should be in that tier is just, I can't add an apple to an orange, you know? He doesn't compare directly to players that are more likely to hit just based on counting who hits and who doesn't with similar marks on their profile, using the marks that actually has some statistical signal. Now, speaking of things that don't have statistical signal, and this is going to sound like shade, but it's not, because I love Matt Harmon and I love his content. Reception perception is a perfectly wonderful and lovely way to make a decision on a player, and he is very good at profiling wide receivers. But I can't add that to the statistical chance that, like, it doesn't add. It's not a jigsaw puzzle piece. It's a piece of a flatbed truck and a piece of a melon. They don't mesh. Like that's interesting, but I have no way of making him change my opinion, if you know what I mean. Like, I can't just have Matt Harmon's opinion. That'd be the only way of me adding Matt Harmon's opinion to what I think, you know.
And the funny thing about film and also the metrics, because you are looking at different things necessarily than other people are, which is why people have different rankings. Like, I'm not seeing that level of wide receiver throughout Rome Odunze's film. Like, I see Rome Odunze as a probably very good player. To me, Neighbors and Harrison are a level above that. Like, they are in the CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. I had DJ Moore up there. We had Ronald Moore. I had Corey Davis in that kind of group. But by and large, that profile is different than what I see Rome Odunze as being. So again, it's CeeDee Lamb, it's Jefferson, it's AJ Brown, it's Chase, it's DJ Moore. Like, those are the profiles that I see Harrison and Malik Neighbors being, and Odunze is at least a set below that. Not that he's bad, he's very good. And you know, in 2022, that we had kind of a weak-ish class. Like, he probably would have been wide receiver 3 or 4. But again, I profiled him last year and did not love him last year. And then I watched him again this year, and his 2023 film is better. And so he got a higher grade than he would have last year if he'd come out. But he's still not in that for me. And again, I'm not saying, this is not me saying I'm right and Matt Harmon's wrong, or me saying Matt Harmon's right and Peter and I are wrong. I'm saying that we all see different things. We've all been fairly successful with what we do. So take it with a grain of salt, Dave. And you know, you have to ultimately make your own decision on either who you're listening to, or go take a peek at Odunze and make that bet. But like, it's ultimately your decision in your leagues to draft Odunze or not.
Yeah, I'll edge towards other people's opinions. I've actively tried to get better at doing that. Am I trying to say this? But I can't just take someone else's rank. Matt Harmon says he should be ranked like Neighbors and Marvin, and so my question would be why? And he's like, my reception perception. I'm like, why would that change my mind? And you can talk a lot about the greatness, and because there's a lot there, a greatness of reception perception. But I don't evaluate film. I don't crunch numbers I'm not a statistician. I just collect them and I try and find what happens. I count what happens more times in this situation versus that situation. And when you look at reception perception being higher than, say, my opinion or just ADP's opinion on a particular player does not give you, just on counting, a greater than chance addition to getting it right. Like it doesn't get it right any more than you would expect based on chance. It doesn't add signal. It doesn't have R squared. There's a whole bunch of nerdy ways of saying that. But from my perspective, just counting, if you were to bet on this player because reception perception had it higher than this, that, or the other, you would not have been right to bet on reception perception more often than just eventually you get lucky based on random chance. Does it have value? Yes. Is it great? Yes. But I'm not a genius. I don't know. I'm not a statistician. I'm not a film evaluator. I can't pick a rank based on something that doesn't beat random chance because I know I don't know. So I'm just going to go with what happens more often. Yeah. That's why I'm saying I like melons and flatbed trucks. There's no way of me adding that to. I would adjust, apart from the fact I already have a really high opinion on Adunze. I've adjusted for the fact that Zach does and J Mike does. I'm like, oh, he's definitely in this tier of wide receivers who actually slightly beat him out. And these numbers that don't go green just because they've got higher numbers doesn't mean they're better, which is why he gets in that tier, even though he's got slightly less impressive numbers. It's like he clearly belongs there, even though his number didn't go as green, because I've already adjusted for it. The idea I would just launch him again because a third person tells me he's also great. Like, how many people, like, that would just be ranking based on the number of people I hear talking about people, if you know what I mean. I could only go so far. I put him in I would need something other than that. However, if you only took into account that was your deep analysis, because it's really deep analysis. He puts a ton of work into that. That would be a fine source of if a player is good or bad at this, that, or the other. I don't know. I have my own process for answering that. There's just no way of adding his process to mine, which is why that's really interesting, but I can't adjust for it. If you know what I mean? Like, am I making sense? Sometimes I'm not sure.
Oh, Dunze's good, Peter.
Yeah, he's pretty good. I feel like I have him ranked like he's good. Anthony Gold, Oregon State. Smurf. Oregon State. That sounds like a team I should have stats for. Let's see if I can add him. But it does seem like a too deep a cut if I'm being. Yeah, I can add him. He's in the CFB, so he's got statistics that count. Oregon State wide receiver, 5'8", 163, according to Sports Football Reference college site. He had a season with over 700 yards, so that's neat. Played 4 years. He's going to be an older prospect. I'd have to add him to see more about it. I'm guessing he's just going to be a too deep a cut for me. But Philip J. Fry, good at all my draft capital, no picks till 2026. Concerned? I'm always concerned when I'm 2 years out of the rookie draft. I try and just go 1 extra year out, but it does happen to me quite a lot, especially if I thought I was competitive at one point and just kind of went for it. So, yeah, I've been there before. It depends what your team looks like, and your team still looks pretty decent. You've got Lamar, Kyler, Watson's fine, QB3, CMC, Bajon, AK, I'm assuming that's Kamara, Eckler.
Yep.
Yeah, this is a competitive team ready to try and win right now, so that's probably the ideal situation to be in because you also have some youth, or at least Lamar and Kyler are going to be playing for a minute, hopefully. So is Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka, AJ Brown's not dead. And Tyreek's a top 5 wide receiver in redraft. He's probably higher than that, or should be. So, yeah, this is the type of team you shouldn't be concerned you don't have that many picks. Although it is very boring this time of year. Yeah, for sure. Something to keep in mind, maybe, but probably not. You've built a good team. I would keep building while you're doing it. Any more moves to make? You can still think about value, especially while the rookie draft's going on. There will be a lot of movement. You shouldn't be thinking, how do I get into this rookie class with this team and this lack of picks? But you should be aware you will have to be involved in rookie picks, if not a rookie draft, again at some point. That's fairly vague. Look to add 26 picks when no one else is interested in them, or 27 picks when no one else is interested in them. Because people will start trading for these side pieces. And what's a 27 second round pick worth right now? Nothing, and it shouldn't be worth anything. But to you, with no draft capital, and in 3 years, you probably will at least want some to bargain with, it has a little bit more incentive to you. So some of your depth can be traded for picks that are way too far out, with the idea you can trade them into more current picks throughout a season, trade them into 26 picks, that kind of a thing.
I think right now, and you're right, Peter, but I think right now still is the time to look at 25. And especially with this roster, because we aren't to the 24 draft, 25 picks are still out far enough that people aren't really paying attention to them. And that is a running back class. And if you look at this roster, you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, and you have Puka Nacua, and you have A.J. Brown. You have young wide receivers that are productive. Your running back group, even though you have Bijan, is older. You have CMC and Kamara, who are in that 2017 class. You have Eckler. So you're a little long in the tooth. If you can get into that 25 class without dismantling too much of your starting core, that's what I would be trying to do. But if you can't, man, leave it. Like, there's some times where the best move is to win, and that's fine.
It is the most boring time, but it comes up if you're doing it right, which is the worst part, or when you're doing it really wrong.
And Philip, if this team gets injured, like if you, and not that you wish that on anybody, but if your team gets injured and you find yourself at a point where you're not competitive, then it's move into those, the not rebuild but reload mode. And I think you can do that with this team because you have enough productive pieces throughout the team that you can move and continue to win and succeed.
Okay, here's something that I could put Odunze in the conversation with Harrison Neighbors versus the rest of this wide receiver draft class. He's the only other player that is as significantly involved in the overall offense compared to the receiving offense. Remember, I talked about the difference between yards per team attempt and receiving yards per team attempt. He's the other player with significant interest, at least pre-draft, who's doing that. Jacob Cowing is another one. But again, I'm talking about significant, he's everyone's. He's a sleeper for a bunch of us, I guess, depending on how you determine sleeper. And Xavier Worthy, which, and again, it's part of why I have him slightly higher into the same tier. But ignoring that, ignoring the fact there is actually another player or two who also feature in this list, it is actually significant. That's why one of the features that I like Worthy. He's got over 1.1 for his career proper yards per team attempt, like all his yards versus a team attempt. That means he was a huge part of his college team's offense relative to most rookie prospects. He's also over 2 receiving yards per team attempt. So he's a huge part of the receiving game. Also likely means that the receiving game was a large part of the team's game. But even when you add in the additional rushing attempts for the team, he's still featuring heavily in that overall offense. And again, that is an impressive mark, and it puts him on the list with Harrison, Neighbors, and Worthy, and players from lower draft classes, frankly, who are so prolific from lower conferences, who are so prolific, you would imagine they are the majority of the offense, like Jacob Cowing. So, yeah, he is in the same tier in some ways as Harrison and Neighbors, if you want to compare his production profile. But again, if you wanted to do that, it would be a just value players based on that. It would be a huge miss rate. Even when you adjusted, like I said, for the Jacob Cowings, the lower tiered prospects overall. But it does speak to the quality of his production, since it is seen to be good on film, Zach, and a reception perception, and it is overall statistically well comparable to successful players from my own work, and I can say that, but also other statistics people like him a lot as well. So combining that all together, again, it puts him in the conversation. When I add it all up, he comes in that second tier with Worthy, not that first tier with Harrison and Neighbors. But yeah, I can kind of see where the argument's coming from if you put it from that perspective. That question's going to bug me. Yeah, that's because Adunze Jamar always wins. All right. Fair enough.
There are things that are it, then there's that. That, not it.
I keep meaning to add that dog in him column, and it seems like it would solve a lot of my problems. Rayman, Taylor or the 108? Jonathan Taylor? I would take Jonathan Taylor. The addition of Chandler doesn't mean much to me, but it's got to be Jonathan Taylor, right?
I would think so.
Yep, fairly easy. Holy cow. That's the name, Zach. I know you weren't looking. In the 2QB1 is what if in the first round Knicks goes to Denver and Penix goes to the Raiders, where do they go in Dynasty rookie draft? If they go in the top 20 picks, let's say, ignoring the landing spots for a second, I think they're going to be late first, Superflex draft picks, which again speaks to what Zach was saying, how some of the players we like a lot more could end up falling a little later, which expands the range of picks we might be interested in individual rookie drafts. Me personally, I would still not be particularly interested in either, especially at the quarterback position, unless they stand out to me, and I have a very small process, Zach and Travis May, or the few other people I actually trust to have some insight at the quarterback position. I'm just not gonna. Well, I got Will Levis offered to me in a trade, and I was just like, haha, thank you again, Travis. Like I'm not saying they're geniuses and they know, but that's kind of how you have to play quarterback. Don't hope that an unexpected player who ends up with draft capital ends up being something more than literally everyone who's good at that thinks. Instead, just be like, okay, I have to be out on that guy because the people who should have somewhat firm opinions aren't high. And most rookie quarterbacks don't do very well because it's really, really tough to do really well for fantasy in the NFL. Zach,
yeah,
you can bring the landing spots into it if you want, but there's no landing spot that would help me. Like there wouldn't be, and there I can have a strong opinion that Penix is much better than what the people I trust who say on this matter actually say. Like I don't think the landing spot is going to elevate their ability. And again, Travis and you and Jay Mike, you evaluate ability. I do a little statistical work now, but I still don't trust it too much.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is in two quarterback and even super flex, the quarterback position gets inflated artificially, and quarterbacks who shouldn't be and the same thing happens in the NFL. Like the NFL is thirsty for quarterbacks, which is why there could be 5 quarterbacks or 6 quarterbacks that go in the first round. There shouldn't be. I mean, I don't know how else to say that. There shouldn't be. To me, there are 3 quarterbacks that should go in the top half of the first round, and maybe another one that goes at the back end of the first round. But that's not how the NFL is going to play things because they need quarterbacks.
I will say I will price enforce even with my picks. Like a top 20 quarterback pick shouldn't fall out the first round. And I have the 112. Most of my wide receivers and running backs that I'm interested in the first round are gone by the 112. But somehow a top 20 pick quarterback has fallen to me, even if everything I just said was true. And they're not meant to be good. Like he's a top 20 draft pick. I'm going to take him hoping that I can trade him for more than that because he shouldn't be falling that late. So to your point, if Knicks and Penix suddenly go top 20 into landing spots and it creates hype, I will price him forth with my pick if I have to, if I can't trade out of it. They should be drafted top 8 or 9 picks in a rookie draft, and I will take them 8 or 9 if people are letting them fall. Right. It's the same way, like 1 out of 10. I was playing like 50 leagues at the time, but like 1 out of 10 leagues, I had Josh Allen after his rookie season, not because I got it right. I got it so stunningly wrong, like a lot of nerds. But that's why he was falling to the early second in some Superflex rookie drafts, and not getting it right, not taking a victory lap. I fortunately didn't completely face plant because I price him forced occasionally. I was with everyone who hated him completely wrong. But he fell to the early second in Superflex drafts, and that's where he was drafted, was just silly. Yeah, even for as much as we all hated him and got it wrong. So that would apply to Knicks and Penix too. I don't think they're particularly good. No, I know who I think has insight into this, think they're particularly good. But if they get drafted high and go to decent landing spots, you can't let them fall that late because, yeah, Josh Allen happened. That one shield that protects all bad quarterbacks, prospects. Philip J. Fry, 1 quarterback, 12 team PPR, no tight end premium, start 8. Really shallow league. That was his comment. I traded James Cook and a 25 first for CMC and Amari. Yeah. CMC. Trying to compete. Goff, CMC, Kamara on a lot of these teams. Aaron Jones, Chubb, Tyreek, Amon-Ra, AJ Brown. I think AJ Brown's kind of quiet right now in the value market.
Well, because he didn't have a great, like, again, it's the Diggs thing. He didn't have a great season last year, but he had a really good one, just not at the level we're used to seeing. Not
to interrupt your question, Philip, but I was just driving to work the other day and thought, it's been a minute since anyone mentioned AJ Brown, the wide receiver 5, and I was like, I wonder. Like, I should send that. I get bored too. Thoughts on this team? What does he need to improve, Zach? I think it looks pretty solid. Obviously, the big gaping hole is quarterback, but it's a 1 QB.
Yeah, so. But again, that's an easy way to make a little noise is in that. And again, this is the Kyler Murray time. We are here. Kyler Murray is a good quarterback. He's a top 8 quarterback, and he's not being valued as it. And his value is going to go up in 4 weeks when Arizona drafts a receiver in the first round. And it's either Marvin Harrison or Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze, and everyone goes, oh, now there's an offense with Kyler Murray. So, like, that would be what I would try to do with this team is if I can add Kyler Murray, he's an upgrade over Goff. You don't have to pay necessarily up for him because it's a 1 quarterback league and he's maybe outside the top 12. I mean, he's kind of close in terms of where people think he is, but he's actually inside the top 6 or 7 or 8. Like, he's good, but that's what I would do.
Quarterback and Murray would be the 2 places I'd look as well. Yeah, because everything else, and the reason is because everything else is solid. I mean, more than solid. Great. JSN or the 108? It's a push. I'd favor the 108 right now.
Yeah.
Again, just the fungibility of the pick kind of wins a blank dynasty question. If it's my team and someone offers me the 108, I may well reject it because, I still have hopes for JSN. But the generic answer is going to have to be it's dynasty, the 108 is more fungible, blah, 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 blah. I think I'd take that most teams. It's a chance to re-roll a rookie pick, even though JSN was a much higher pick in that draft class. This is a much deeper draft class. So,
yeah, I mean, and it's a higher pick in the draft class, but a lower draft class. So it's similar. Like, it's literally a similar range.
Well, I like the top tier list. Well, we said what we said about last year. It was pretty good class. Wide receiver specifically a little deeper this year. Superflex. That does change the value of the pick, actually, because it makes the 8 more valuable. The position, the value gets a little deeper. So, yeah, it pushes me onto the 108 even more. Just wait on it. Have either of you played in salary cap leagues? I've experimented with it, specifically because John Bosch was doing one. And I like John, and I like the way he runs the league. If you're looking for a guy who knows how to run a league, and I can frustrate to no end, which is also personally fun. John's one. He's fantastic. He's fantastic at this. But I hated it. I don't know how to play him. And I wasn't learning through natural talent. I thought maybe I'll join, I'll listen, I'll learn. And, I know a bit about fantasy, it'll help. And after 2 years, I was like, I still don't know how to play in this thing. I'd best give the team to someone who knows what they're doing.
And I have a very similar experience where it was John Bosch, it was Empire Leagues. I played in Capitalist Pigs too, which is a salary cap league, but an interesting
I've heard of those, and they
it.
sound so cool. And every time I think about it, I'm like, but I'll suck, and then I'll give up the team. It's the salary cap. Yeah.
And there's a whole economy to the Capitalist Pigs leagues, which is kind of cool. But again, that's not what I like about fantasy football. Like, to me, I like the player evaluation and the strategy around that rather than the financial strategy. And so, I'm the if I'm building a Madden team, I prefer to turn the salary cap off and figure out recruiting and that sort of thing. I'd rather do that.
What salary cap reminds me of, and especially the Pigs leagues, because they're always talking about them on any podcast John's on, and they sound so fascinating. It reminds me of when I went to college. I decided not to just do history. I decided to do archaeology and history, like a joint degree. And after the first year, I realized I love archaeology. It's fascinating. It's about the past. The science is interesting. I'm not overwrought with science. I like studying that stuff. It's really interesting, really good stuff, and I didn't want to do it anymore. It wasn't the same. I just wanted to do more history, and that's what happens when we use salary cap leagues. They sound fascinating. I think they're wonderful. I think there's a lot I could learn here. I think they're perfectly enjoyable. Instead, I just want to play more Dynasty. Yeah, and just out me to a regular Dynasty. There's not I should love it, and I don't. So I end up tapping out every time. Sorry. What do you think of the new kickoff rules? I've only seen them in passing. The rules were passed, and the graphs and the diagrams are passed while I was kind of on the road, so I only saw them on my phone. I haven't sat down with it and really figured out what's going on there. Some of it sounds like it might have fantasy impact. That's why I say it that way. Normally I'm like, that's about playing football, and I play fantasy football. But some of it sounds like it might have fantasy, especially in leagues where there are return yards. So I do have to sit down and figure that stuff out, but I have not yet. So yeah, sorry, I don't know yet. But it does sound like it's something we might be able to pay attention to or get some value out of.
I think that you're going to see. So the last couple of years, you've seen a lot of start on the 35 because or the 20, whatever it was, the 25. They messed with the touchback rules. I think you're going to see more returns, and it's going to benefit the kicking team to kick it to the return team, but not into the end zone. Because I think you're going to actually gain, 4 or 5 yards advantage defensively by kicking. I don't know how much that impacts things, but probably a little.
I suppose it's how effective you can be at doing that versus you'll be giving up more immediate 35-yard line to stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll sit down with it at some point. It's probably not wonderfully fantasy impactful, but it sounded like it could be a little bit more. What I'm gaining from most of the rule changes like that this year is the league is increasing its desire to score more points, which from a fantasy perspective is, again, why I want to be careful and want to check out those rules, because while it might not be better football, to be honest with you, it's going to have an impact in fantasy. The more points are scored, even if they're fruitless points, even if they're not particularly game impactful points, is going to affect fantasy. It's one of the ways that it might be relevant to fantasy and not the NFL, in reverse almost, if you know what I mean. So I do try and pay attention to that stuff. Largely, it's never been too impactful, but worth keeping an eye on, because the league does seem to be ramping up their points and touchdowns and passing yards, get eyeballs, frankly. And they do seem to be angling rules towards increasing that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it affect if you're in TA1, like Russell's Trade Addicts 1, where there are return yards. There you go. It's a little bit, but not much.
And that's the end of the questions and comments. I'm assuming there's something I forgot that we should have mentioned, but I wanted to say I feel like I've been a little ranty today. I don't know why.
Nah, you've been fine.
A little aggro.
When we have just the little bit of lag, it's tough. So you end up. I think you fill space.
I do try.
Yeah. So.
And I was going to say, no, I've been pulling back my content. What has been happening is my time is taking up so much more with my work week these days that it's been taking away from fantasy. But the schedule I'm trying to work out is, instead of finding a way to get back, is thinking down my fantasy content, just the stuff that I like and I enjoy and I actually want to use. So it's a database collection much more than making the videos on everything I think about it. I'll write my notes, I'll do my podcast on it, but I'm not going to make it super simple. Because that's what I was trying last year. I was making a video on literally every
little short,
every player, every positional take, so that people that prefer videos or are on YouTube and not subscribe to the podcast could maybe see it when I posted it. I'm not doing that so much because that was pure effort in the hopes of helping more people with what I think. Instead, I think the database is probably the most helpful thing I do, and I enjoy collecting it and making it and changing it. And I enjoy my podcast because Jake quit, and I never will, damn it. I'll never be Jake. I mean, honestly, it's a hate thing at this point. It's a spite thing. But and I enjoyed making YouTube videos, but not enough that I was willing to give up one of those things. So I might still make some, and that's also changing the way I speak. So I'm not like on this podcast. I don't have my takes nailed down. My process is very tuned at this point and always open to change. But it's not in quick take, simple, do this, do that, trade for that player type format, which is better for YouTube videos. It's better for going on other people's podcasts. I kind of stopped doing that. Not that I'm not willing to, it's just no one asks, and I'm not going out my way to find out. Because again, I'm thinking back my time, because my time's been sunk back. And I'm feeling that today. Like, I feel like I'm just a random guy shouting, and I'm relying on, I did the work, right? I don't have to prove it, right? Cool. Because that's what most of that content, most of the content, even articles that you have to do, is prove that you did the work. And I like to think people that are listening to my podcast are talking to me on the Dynasty Grind. Why you should always challenge me, prove that if it's ever uncertain, or check out my database. I am doing the work still. I'm just not doing the work to turn it into content-friendly, simple, better, clearer sentences. And I'm feeling that today. It actually feels worse. Like I don't feel like part of me is like, you should be able to say that so much clearer. You know what? Oh, it's actually, sorry. I'm literally just, the stream these days is me talking with my friends and my friends. So yeah. It's a different way of making content. I'm not used to it. I can't say I'm comfortable with it yet, but it's making my life a lot easier. So I thank you all for being a little open to the ranty version of me. And sorry if it's not as good, I guess is what I'm saying. But something that had to give. I was giving way too much of myself for not little back or nothing, but I have other responsibilities I got to start seeing to them. It's that simple.
But I think it is good, Peter. I think this is what this should be. If you're not getting paid,
what it was when we started, then.
Well, but if you're not getting paid to do this full time, then breaking your back over content, as opposed to like putting out good content but enjoying what you're doing and not overextend. Like, I think you can do this and be of value to the community and everybody. Like, I mean, we have a great chat every Wednesday, and like I feel like this is I mean, obviously, people are getting stuff out of it. We're getting stuff out of it. It's fun. I get to talk to you. You get to talk to me. We get to talk to the chat. Some noob and Rain Man are in the chat. Like, still, it's
Dave.
great.
You know, Dave found us because he disagreed with us last year, I think, on a rookie take. And then we turned out to be somewhat right. And so he's like, I'm going to start listening to you guys, which is not just cool for us. Like, it shows a really good, like, just, okay, I got something wrong. That you'll be surprised how few people are able to go, I wasn't, not that you were wrong, to be clear. But you're trying, oh, I'm losing something.
I can't see you anymore.
Anyway, hopefully you can still hear me.
I can.
Okay, I don't know why that just happened. Anyway, I was going to say I wanted to appreciate Dave there because it's something I try to do better at. Like, I was very, very much disagreed. Now I'm going to start listening closer. Not because we appreciate the view, because like I just said, I'm kind of cutting down on that level of motivation. But I thought that was really cool. And now he's been in the chat ever since and making this more fun. I really don't know why my camera died. It's still on.
Did you click the stop cam down at the bottom?
No, I just unclicked it, actually. Anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to say that at the end here, I guess. Hopefully you're still enjoying some of it, because I really enjoy talking to you all, and I appreciate it.
All right, Peter, we're at the end. Rayman,
yeah, you can't see, but I'm giving signals, I swear.
All right. Look over there.